if you play this game on Windows right now, right? And you have this setup like a 6800 AMG, you switch to Linux, it's like, if you're playing in 1080p, it's like you buy a new graphic card, bro. You don't need to upgrade your graphic card. Just switch to Linux. Like here, like what are you doing on Windows? If you have an AMG card, like what are you doing on Windows? I'm not even kidding. Like look at this. You don't need to buy a 5090. Just switch to Linux. Salut everyone. In this video, we are going to react to Fabio, the owner of the Ancient Gameplays channel. And this video is going to be talking about how Linux is apparently faster than Windows in 2025. So let's watch the video together.
Hello guys, Ancient Gameplays, I'm Fabio Pisco.
Who?
And this is my cat.
Bro, the cat is awesome. Like we already like paused on this cat, but the cat is awesome. So it's already a 10 on 10 in my books. Okay? And also, Fabio, if you want to copyright strike me reacting to your video, that's fair, dude. Don't hesitate to do it. I will understand, okay? Let's get into it.
For this video, I'm testing gaming performance on Windows versus Linux. And I can tell you right
Okay, so Windows versus Linux, and you can tell right away, he might have watched my video where I compare like the best distro for gaming. Because it chose Nobara, and this is a really good choice. This is a really good choice. I'm really looking forward to what type of result is gonna get. Mirko, did you do another donation? Dude! Man, the guy, like, Mirko, you really want to be in this video? Hello! Okay, thank you very much for the $1.25 donation, Mirko. You're the goat, man. Thank you very much. Fabio, have my babies.
away that the results that you'll see here will blow your mind.
Blow
And
my
before you
mind?
start commenting,
Listen, dude, blow my mind. I'm all for it. Before the video goes, what we have been watching for the last 3 years, last 3 years, I would say like last 3 years, since really like Proton was pushed into the gaming world on Linux, is that if you are running an NVIDIA card, there is a high chance you're gonna get still like more FPS on Windows versus Linux. You will get around like minus, I would say like 5% to minus like 25%, depending on the game, if you are running an NVIDIA card. So I made a lot of video about those topics. If you want to watch them, don't hesitate to go on my channel and check. But on the other hand, if you have an AMD card, there is a high chance you're gonna have like on-par performance or even like better performance on Linux, around like, I would say between 5 and 15% like uplift depending on the game when running the game on Linux. So if you have AMD and Linux, this is a win. There is some, I would say like counter example, because on AMD it's a little bit more complicated, but if you are using like game with ray tracing, you might be under on Linux versus Windows. Maybe he's going to talk about it, but this is the overall trend. Like overall trend is like better performance with AMD with certain case and worse performance versus Windows with NVIDIA on Linux. So let's see his finding.
things like I'm testing an optimized Linux version versus a standard Windows 11.1. No. I am literally a noob when it comes to Linux. And the few things that I know them because I learned them.
Okay, so this is great. At least he's straight to the point. Like he's a beginner on Linux and he's learning on the go. So this is what everybody should think, even if you are like 20 years of Linux under the back, because there is always something to learn, right? So I like the approach.
While making this video. And the results you see here are from testing Windows 11 24.2 versus the Novara 41 Linux.
Man, like we already win. Guys, you already win on the screen. Dude, the wallpaper, it's a win. Allez hop, we done. End of the video, chat. End of the video. We already won, chat. Come on. Like what is this? What is this blue stuff? Look at this wonderful image. And you know what? If you want to know how Glorious Eggroll got this image, you have to go and watch my podcast with the actual creator of Nobara. Yes, that's a shameless plug, but I don't care.
And all I had to do here was basically enter my Steam account, download Proton, which is a translation layer from Valve, something that we had before like Wine,
Yes.
and it was done. Every single game I tested was
Again, I'm a noob on Linux, but I believe Proton comes with already installed in some case. I might be wrong. That's right. It might be installed in some case. And there is another thing to activate. You have to activate the compatibility layer within the Steam option. But it's okay. Like, we forgive you, no problem.
was running out of the box. Besides those games that have really picky anti-cheat software, because it just doesn't work because of the software, because the game would work. And I tested over 20 games, and every single one of
So, interesting point. So he understood that anti-cheat is a problem, not the game itself. Like, the game would run, but anti-cheat is blocking it. So for a newbie, he understands a lot already, chat.
one of those worked. Even like Pal World, I was testing offline, but even if I went online, it would be the same. It just worked. There are some games with anti-cheat systems that won't work as well, but most of them.
It just works, dude. It just works. And by the way, if you want to create a server of Power World on your Linux machine, Linux server, I have a couple of videos on that. Pretty good video, I have to say, and also a full tutorial. I'm just saying.
Them will, or at least some of them will. And now you ask, what if I want to play the games that I have outside of Steam?
No problem. Heroic Launcher, boys. That will be my answer. Lutris bottles, but Heroic Launcher.
And I asked myself the same question.
Yes.
And after a bit of searching, I found a launcher.
Dude, what a god! He went with the right one, dude. He went with the right one. Okay, like, Fabio, mi piacere. Is that good in Italian? Mi piacere, Fabio. Fabio.
Called Heroic Launcher that allows you to have all your games from GOG, Epic Store, and Amazon Prime Store in the same software, which is pretty neat. And I'm pretty sure that there is something close to that for the EA and Ubisoft launchers. But for now, I'm gonna launch you towards today's sponsor. Today's video sponsor
so for the actual over launcher, you can use them through Heroic Launcher. So there is like 3 actual launcher which are supported out of the box with the Heroic Launcher, but you can install all the other ones. So I made some tutorial about having like Battle.net installed via the Heroic Launcher, which I really recommend, chat. Oh, he's Portuguese? Darn, I thought he was Italian. So I don't know about Portuguese. I don't know how to say I like you in Portuguese. Darn, I suck, chat. I'm gonna have to learn Portuguese.
The Nobara 41 ISO, I installed the system.
Yes.
Then it came with Steam installed already. All I had to do was install Proton, and after that I just installed the Heroic Launcher in order to play my games from GOG.
And that's all. That's all, dude.
The ones that you see in this video, like The Witcher and Cyberpunk 2077. And that's all.
Yes, that's all. That's all. He said it, chat.
With this, I mean that anyone that can do a clean installation of Windows nowadays, which is pretty simple, can do a clean installation of Nobara 41 Linux as well.
So I would say like installing Windows is harder than installing Linux. And I know like a lot of people are gonna be like, no, it's not true. Installing Windows is easier. No, bro. Because after installing Windows, you have to go through the hassle of installing the driver chipset. You have to go to the hassle of installing the NVIDIA driver and everything. And if you think it's hard on Linux, like, you are totally wrong. If you get the right distro, everything is installed out of the box. You have nothing to do. On Windows, it's a requirement. You have to install them. So, yes.
And make it ready to play. And this might sound odd for people that used Linux like 10 years ago, but Linux nowadays is actually easy to use.
Yes! Yes! So this is like, man, this is a really bad misconception. It's like some user like tried, I don't know, Ubuntu 10 years ago, and I don't want to say it was a mess, but yeah, it was not what it is now. It was a mess. Yeah, I can say it. It was a mess compared to what it is now. Now the experience on Linux is above. Is way above. You know, if you're still thinking that Linux is exactly as it was like 10 years ago, you're so wrong. Just in the last 3 years, everything went like up to the roof, chat. Like, it's just insane, especially for gaming. So yeah, give it a try.
And in terms of gaming, we must appreciate what Valve did with Proton, that is based on the good old Wine, because without them, things wouldn't have evolved the way they did, I suppose, even with SteamOS and so on. And
yeah, good point. So Valve did a good job for the last 3 years, I have to say. Like, they changed like the Windows gaming overall. Like it just went to another level. Like they pushed it to a huge new level. I heard Windows 12, you have to sacrifice your firstborn to update. Yes. Tech bros are coming all around Linux again, seeing the gains that are on the table. The other day I saw TechCity also experimenting. It will happen more and more. Yeah, I agree. Lastly, we had TechCity, we had Epos Vox, who jump into the train. What else? We have this gentleman here, Fabio. It's starting, chat. It is starting. I just hope that, user, they will test, experiment, but they will also like watch some of the tutorial I made, because without tutorial, it might be a little bit more rough. Even if it's easy, there is still some points that need to be made. My tutorial or any other one tutorial, but I think like there is like sometime some questions that need to be answered. Just to be clear. Robert Lee, yeah, that's right. Robert Lee, Groovy Train, like that's a good one, yeah. Like we start to have more and more users switching to Linux, and this is good, chat. Like this is good. Linux is still not perfect, but just those huge creators showing the way, leading the way, it's helpful, right?
Now that you know how I made things work, let's see the results.
Yes.
This time we start with Witcher 3, and in this game Windows 11 with the AMD Adrenalin 25.1.1 drivers performs better when testing in Novigrad with the RX 6800 at all resolutions.
Okay. So, I like those graph, chat. Man, I wish I could do those graph, like nice graph like that. So we have The Witcher 3 with a 6800, so AMG 6800, 1080p, 1440p, 4K, CPU 7600 3D at stock, and DDR5 6000 CL36. Okay, so we are in a case scenario where the PC is not really like pushed to the max, which is fine. It's more like a stock review, right, chat? Like it's more like a stock review, which is fine. Here you can see that for whatever reason, we are having less performance. So my question is, does the Witcher 3 has ray tracing here? But Ultra Plus, when I see those results, I would say that the Witcher 3 has ray tracing, and that's the reason why we are there, dude. A little bit of a loss. Because without ray tracing, I'm pretty sure like the Witcher 3 will be faster. So the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt 3 next gen update is available, bringing NVIDIA DLSS 3 and ray tracing. So that's why. So if you are using so this is what I said earlier in the video, right? If you are using a game with ray tracing on AMD, on Linux versus Windows, you're gonna have a little bit of like slowdown.
But considering how poorly Linux gaming performed for some years, this is a major uplift when it comes to performance, especially due to Valve's Proton.
Yes.
As we go into Counter-Strike 2 with low settings, we see Windows...
Wait. Counter-Strike 2, low settings, and he has less FPS than in Windows. He should not, chat. So, okay, let me explain. Counter-Strike is a problem. Counter-Strike 2 is really hard to bench because most of the people, they don't understand how it works, okay? Do I explain it in detail? Okay, let's explain in detail. Here is a kicker. So this is really confusing. I almost got there. So CS2, it can run in two ways. DirectX 11, okay, and Vulkan. This is to double check, but you're gonna understand exactly where is the issue. If you run on Windows, okay, without any launch option, it's gonna go with DirectX. I have a doubt on the DirectX 11 here, so we'll say like DirectX, okay? But on Linux, it's gonna be pushed in Vulkan. If you just make a comparison like that, you're not really comparing the same thing, right? So this is the first problem. And second problem is that on Linux, it runs native. And I've seen some user running it through Proton, which is not what you are supposed to do. You're going to get kicked anyways. But this is an issue. It runs native. If you run through Proton, well, you go back to DirectX, and like it could be a little bit messy when running it. All right, so now you understand the complexity.
Windows 11 pulling ahead once again, and this happened since I was using Proton GE as well, because even though Counter-Strike 2 was supposed to run natively, it just wouldn't start somehow.
So he had the issue, dude. He couldn't run Counter-Strike 2 natively, and I think this is the reason why he went under.
And it did start with Proton, but the performance was subpar, as you can see. But it gets even worse when you raise the settings to very high with 4 times MSAA.
So I think here it's related to the fact you use Proton. I've done several videos on Counter-Strike Source 2, and what I noticed on Linux versus Windows is that on Windows you will have higher FPS, but the minimum lows will be higher on Linux. So the overall experience on Counter-Strike 2, if you set it up correctly, right? If you launch it natively, you will have a better experience on Linux.
Here, Windows 11 is 27% faster at 1080p, 43% faster at 1440p, and 46% faster at 4K. And I looked online and it seems to be the case even when running natively, with Counter-Strike 2 running worse on Linux versus Windows. Although as we move to Plague Tale Requiem things change, and now no barra Linux is faster than Windows even...
Whoa! Look at this, dude! The famous 15%. Here he destroyed it, 15%, Chad.
When using a translation layer to run the games, in this case, Valve's Proton GE.
Yes!
Which shows us that either AMD is leaving too much performance in the table, or Linux is just much more efficient in some cases, especially when it comes to CPU load. This being said, Nobara 41 is 17% faster at 1080p, 13% faster at 1440p, and 8% faster at 4K.
So I like his analysis. How do you analyze that, right? Okay, we'll talk about it later in the video, I guess. Let's watch all these results and then we'll talk.
And even when moving to Cyberpunk 2077,
nice.
That's using the Heroic Launcher and Proton G,
so it's like a 3%
upgrade
there.
with Linux, which is something that is still blowing my mind. The same game running with a conversion or translation layer is actually faster than when running natively on Windows. Some people stated that in some games the performance was higher on Linux because there was some elements of the X12 that couldn't be run or...
So this argument came back a lot of time, okay? So the argument is that the game run better on Linux because there is some, feature which are not existing on Linux, and it's false. So this game, even on NVIDIA, in certain case scenario, when you are CPU limited, Linux does better. Okay, so for this specific case, I would say like the uplift is linked mainly to the fact that Linux, when you are CPU limited, is shining, right? That's why, like, if you run Linux on a laptop, you might have better performance on the laptop than if you are running Windows, because by definition, laptop, they are a little bit of have a CPU limitation, like everything is related to the CPU. And it will give you better result, right? On my previous PC with my 5950X, I was CPU limited. And I'm telling you, like, when I was comparing to Windows, I made a video about it actually. I had better FPS on my Linux machine with certain options compared to Windows.
Ran on Linux, but I didn't really notice anything different, to be honest, visually, so I guess that's not the case.
It's not the case.
And now we have Robocop Rock City, where we not only have higher averages, but also higher 1% loads.
Nice.
That are 12% higher at 1080p and 6% higher at 1440p. Again, the difference isn't really much, but seeing games running this well on Linux is astonishing, to be honest.
Nice. Man,
and now we
he's
have
praising
Vanisher's
it.
Ghost of New Eden, an Unreal Engine 5 title, and in this specific part, a CPU-intensive one, Linux is beating the shit out of Windows, having higher 1% lows than Windows has on averages at both 1080p and 1440p, which is insane. And again, we found no differences whatsoever graphically wise, and this game was even retested since the difference was so big. That's what she said. Here.
So that's what she said. Okay, dude. So how much it is?
Here, Nobara 41.
This is like 15%, 23%, dude. So 23%. So let me explain that. If you play this game on Windows right now, right, and you have this set up like a 6800 AMG, you switch to Linux. It's like if you are playing in 1080p, it's like you buy a new graphic card, bro. You don't need to upgrade your graphic card. Just switch to Linux. Like here, like what are you doing on Windows? If you have an AMG card, like what are you doing on Windows? I'm not even kidding. Like look at this. You don't need to buy a 5090. Just switch to Linux.
1080p, 16% faster at 1440p.
Like what is this?
and 10% faster at 4K, which again is a huge win for Linux here. Hellblade 2 is another Unreal Engine 5 title, but a way more GPU-driven one. Still, we do get a performance uplift when using Linux versus Windows. And again, this should never be the case, as Linux is using Proton to translate the code in order to run the game, and that takes power, so again, I guess it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is, Woski.
And Black Myth Wukong, another Unreal Engine 5 title, is showing exactly the same.
Man, that's a big uplift.
Pulling slightly ahead of Windows 11. Not by much like in other scenarios or other titles, but still a win. Something that nobody would have thought possible some years ago.
So, listen guys, here you can see like he lowered the FSR there, or TSR, whatever, like he lowers the upscaling, because normally it's 75%, and he went from cinematic to high. Man, like that's a huge uplift there again, right? Especially in the lows. He kind of proves the point I was saying earlier, right? When you put most of the effort on the CPU, Linux is just like destroying everything.
And now we have Homeworld 3, an excellent title to test CPUs. At 1080p we're more CPU driven again, so Linux takes the upper hand, although as we move to 1440p and 4K and things get more GPU driven, Windows starts pulling its own weight, finally, and starts performing better than Linux, the way that it should always be. It happened the same way with Counter-Strike 2 that ran much worse on Linux when using very high settings, so I guess that we might be into something here. Resident Evil 4 is another great title, and we're not testing with ray tracing since we can't enable it on this game when using Proton GE.
Oh, you can't enable ray tracing on Resident Evil 4? I didn't know that, dude. I didn't know. So if you have an AMD card, you can't enable ray tracing for certain game?
Still, Linux is pretty much on par with Windows 11 here, being actually slightly faster overall, but nothing really relevant. But this means that you can play Resident Evil 4 on Linux with virtually the same performance that you do on Windows, and that's crazy. And I also tested some more recent games like Stalker 2 to see how they would perform, and again, Linux is taking the lead, delivering virtually the same results as Windows 11, but with better 1% lows at 1080p. I do have to state though that I felt like this game had more latency when running on Linux. This was the only one where I felt it though, and it might even be placebo effect since I didn't measure it, but Stalker 2 just felt slower to respond on Linux.
Oh, that's an interesting take there. I didn't have this feeling while I tested it. I'm wondering if there is something in the option like you forget to disable. That's odd. That's odd. You notice there is more input lag on this one. You can't enable ray tracing only for AMD 6000 card on some game. Got it. Okay.
At least to me. Maybe due to Proton.
Yeah, I don't know what he had this issue, chat. I didn't encounter that, but I believe him. Maybe there is something going on behind the scene, like force vsync with this specific game with Proton G. Interesting feedback there.
God of War Ragnarok shows more of the same here, with Nobara 41 being
Man,
again on
it's a
top
win.
of the hill, being
It's a
slightly
win,
faster than Windows 11 at all resolutions. And by the time you reach this game, you might already have prepared for the rest of the video. But as for me, I still don't understand how this can happen. I guess that maybe AMD drivers are just much better on Linux.
Also,
yes, I do have to test AMD and Nvidia cards for the next video.
Yeah, like,
as for Silent Hill,
if he goes with AMD Nvidia card, he's gonna get exactly the result I was mentioning before. But I'm curious to see his take on it. Interesting, chat.
2, it is a shit show when it comes to traversal stutters, being it on Windows or Linux. Linux does show slightly higher 1% lows across the board though, delivering 31% better 1% lows at 1080p. But still crappy.
Man, I didn't know Silent Hill 2 was running that bad, chat. What are those what is this, chat? What are those lows? It's actually crazy, right? I didn't buy it, but...
And now we have another surprise with Space Marine 2 being considerably faster on Linux as well.
Oh,
this
nice.
time we have Nobara 41 being 15% faster at 1080p, 10% faster at 1440p, and 6% faster at 4K. And again, either these AMD Linux drivers do a much better job than the Windows ones, or something is very wrong.
Nice, another
and this
win,
makes
chat.
me think that maybe AMD could be extracting much more performance out of their cards with better drivers for Windows, I guess. But it is what it is. And we'll now have some fun with the Rift Breaker CPU benchmark. where the results are more or less in line with what we saw before in the
Yeah,
previous
it's nothing
benchmarks.
crazy
But
there,
as
right?
soon as we move to the GPU benchmark, things change, and Windows 11 now takes the lead, being 6% faster at 1080p, 9% faster at 1440p, and 11% faster at 4K.
Man, maybe I need to buy this game, Riskbreaker, because you can choose if you bench the GPU or the CPU. That will be interesting, no, chat?
Showing us once again that in the more GPU-driven scenarios, Windows is still superior. But when it comes to the more CPU-driven ones, Linux usually takes the lead, even with a translation layer on top of it.
It's interesting also to see that it disables the ray tracing there.
Which is actually interesting. And this time I also tested Palworld.
Nice.
And again, we have more of the same, with Nobara 41 performing slightly better at 1080p and 1440p, and being slightly slower at 4K.
Man, if you look at the gain in terms of lowest, it's just crazy, right? It is crazy, chat. Like, the experience is going to be way smoother on Linux, dude. So not in 1440p and 4K for whatever reason. You know what I believe? I believe maybe the 6800 reached its limit in 1440p. Maybe this card is not, the best for 1440p high. So here you reach the limit of the card, right? So it's kind of like struggling. I don't know. I'm just sharing my thought, chat.
We should state though that the 1% lows were considerably lower on the Linux at higher resolutions, which again proves the point that with more GPU load, usually Linux tends to perform slightly worse.
Yeah, that's a good take.
Getting closer to the end, we have the Thaumaturge, a game that I actually enjoyed a lot. And again, we have the same tendency as in some other games, with Linux performing better at 1080p, delivering higher averages and especially higher 1% lows, but as soon as we go to 1440p and 4K, those same 1% lows get considerably lower than when running Windows 11.
With my setup, I always noticed that the 1% lows, they were higher on Linux, even with NVIDIA. Like the 1% lows, they are better on Linux. But I couldn't reproduce this at different resolution. And my guess is that the GPU is showing its limit here. That could be the reason why, right? Another point could be the fact that I don't know the CPU. I don't know the configuration he's using here. But in those resolution, maybe stock is not enough too for Linux. I don't know, just my thought. I could be the two potential direction I would take to explain those difference in terms of number. I couldn't reproduce that on my hand for sure.
Which is a bummer, to be honest, but not a deal breaker at all if you ask me. At least if you're looking into Linux for gaming, not a deal breaker at all. Now, after looking at all the results being basically better on Linux, you might be asking yourself, how is it possible for Windows to be better?
So I guess it's because of the Counter-Strike 2, right?
On Linux all the time. Well, that happens due to the shitty Counter-Strike 2 results that we got on Linux. Take those away and you have Nobara 41 being 4% faster at 1080p and 3% faster at 1440p. Which again is something that is very hard to explain, as those games were running natively on Windows and most of them still run worse than on Linux.
So here, it still shocked me that he's only 4% above Windows. I would have expected him to be more like 5 to 15 at 1080p, okay? So my guess is that the choice of graphic card might not be pushing the difference really strong. I would say that. My numbers are based on some of my buddies who have been benching game for a long time in the community. So whether they come from, the CachyOS Discord, which have been lurking a lot and looking at all those benchmarks, or whether they come from the Gaming Linux French Discord, which has a lot of bench there, and some of my buddies who own, for example, a 7900 XTX, right? And some of those bench, they are not really aligning with that. It will be more between +5 and +15%, not only +4%. It's aligned with what they think, but the proportion is smaller. You know what I mean?
And to someone that has been testing Linux a bit here and there over the years, these results just blew my mind. But well, let's go to the final.
I like how enthusiastic he is. He's really enthusiastic, huh, chat?
And well, guys, as you saw, very, very interesting results. And again, I told you in the beginning of the video that most of the results, or at least some of the results, would blow your mind.
Yes.
And at least to my mind, they did it. I was never expecting Linux gaming to perform better than Windows, apart from native implementations, like maybe Counter-Strike 2 running natively, Dota 2 and some other games that can run natively on Linux.
So it's a good point. And sometimes running natively doesn't mean better performance, right? In general versus Windows. Most of the time it does. Like, for example, like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, native just explode like Windows. But he has less options, so it's discutable, right? Like, it's not really the same version of the game. Valheim too, like if you play Valheim native, you're gonna be like blown away. I would say if you play also game like sandboxed game like Minecraft, if you play Minecraft, you're gonna lose your mind. Like, dude, like you're gonna lose your mind on Linux. It runs way better overall than on Windows. So yeah, you know, I'm happy he kind of like discovered the fact that Proton and Wine is not like, you know, sucking performance out of gaming. So, you know, we could talk about NVIDIA, but I already talk a lot about NVIDIA. There is a difference with NVIDIA because NVIDIA is way more complex, right? It's a closed driver issue. The fact that you can develop like Wine and Proton as you can do it with open driver, that's the main issue, right? That's why you lose this performance. But when you have access to the source and you're running AMG, dude, this thing is just flying.
Now, working better than Windows while running a Proton GE layer, so basically translating the code in order to run it on Linux and still having better performance than Windows, that's just crazy. And I don't really know if that comes to AMD drivers, if the drivers are just better on Linux, and maybe the Windows drivers are handicapping the performance of the AMD cards on Windows. I don't really know. What I know is that I tested on both systems with the same card, and Linux is just better in most of them, especially in games like Space Marine 2.
Boom! He said it. Linux is just better. It is just better, chat.
Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, the difference is just big. And funny enough, games that have native implementation on Linux, like Counter-Strike 2, when I run them with Proton GE, they actually run much worse than on Windows.
So again, I explained why, right?
Games, even God of War Ragnarok, Stalker 2, they just run generally better. Even with Proton, they just run generally better on Linux, and that is just insane. I know it's 2025, but what they did here now with Linux is just insane. You can just go install Linux, install Proton, make your Steam account, install the Heroic Launcher, for example, and just enjoy your games. Just play them. All you have to do is basically just select Proton, go to play, and the game will launch and will play. Games like Resident Evil 4 will have the same exact performance on Windows and Linux. So it won't.
So there are sometimes some games where you can't use ray tracing with Proton, but some of them work.
Yes. Won't be losing performance anymore. Or in the games that you will be losing performance, well, I mean, it's Proton, it's a translation layer to Vulkan, you can't do much, but generally the performance is basically the same, at least on AMD cards. Also, guys, I just forgot of another very, very good point of having Nobara Linux versus Windows is basically the preloading of the shaders. So
I think it's gonna be faster again also on Linux, especially with AMD. I was talking about that in a podcast with TKG, where he was explaining that they did such a good work on like making those shaders running faster. Let's see what he said.
On Linux, you have, at least on the Steam games, of course, you have way less stutters, and that happens because since you're running Vulkan.
Okay, so he's not talking about that. Okay. So he's just talking about the stutter. So I'm not sure it's related to the shader. I thought he will be mentioning the shader loading. So the discussion I had with TKG at the time was the fact that they were able to reduce the time of compiling the shader on Linux versus Windows. He was talking about the advance that the Proton team made, and it was really interesting to listen to what he was saying. But here he's more talking about the stuttering within the game and the smoothness.
Shaders are preloaded when using Vulkan, and that's a thing that I believe that that Steam should do, or should allow you to do still on the Windows side as well, because it just works much better. For example, in games like the Thaumaturge where I had stutters every step that I took in a new direction. When running Nobara Linux, it just works well because the Vulkan shaders are just preloaded, sorry, Portuguese was taking over, before the game goes in. And the same happens for all the other games. So generally, even in Pal World, for example, generally the games are way smoother at the first try because the shaders are preloaded, thing that Steam should allow for the X11 and the X12 on Windows as well. I would love it. So this is another big side for Linux.
So I don't know if it's really because of the shader, chat. I don't think it's. Yeah, I'm not sure, chat. I think it's more because of the way like Linux handle everything versus Windows. I agree with the fact there is less stutter. The main reason behind it, like the technical reason, I'm not sure it's this, but I agree with this statement. There is less stutter. Like the experience is way better.
Now, if you want me to do another one of these videos, because I didn't really know if people would like this video or not, I hope they did.
And it's something that, chat, and there is something, so let me finish on that. The stutter and the experience in game is something you can't really understand while running a benchmark. And I do believe that's why like some of the benchmarks, sometimes they tell you a story, but they don't tell you the full story. I remember when playing Apex Legends, like the experience was way better on Linux. The game was smoother. It was like, in terms of reaction, like the input lag was better on Linux. Like everything was better on Linux. Like some things that need to be said. And any benchmark couldn't give you this feedback. And I've been saying that for like 3 years, like almost 4 years now. It's just better on Linux, chat.
So if you want another one now with a newer card, for example, the 7900 XTX, and maybe with something like a 4080 Super, testing Windows versus Linux as well, just leave the comment in the comment section telling me that you want 7900 XTX, for example, versus RTX 4080 Super, Windows versus Linux as well. Because
so this will be interesting too, right? To see if the GPU itself was a bottleneck in high resolution for the 1% low. I believe it was. Maybe I'm wrong, but it will be interesting to see, right?
I will make this video if this video has at least, let's say, 50,000, 1,000 views. I would aim for at least 50,000 views. If the video reaches the 50,000 views,
50,000 views, easy, no?
One for the XTX.
Yeah, here we go. We are already there.
Versus NVIDIA cards.
Go watch the video, chat.
Also on Windows and Linux.
You go watch the video and you put a thumbs up.
Again, with these results, you now know that Linux gaming in 2025 is not perfect, but near perfect. In terms of applications like Blender and so on, you have ROCm for the AMD cards, of course. You have ROCm natively on Linux, meaning that you don't really need to do all the steps with a Linux subsystem on Windows and so on. You just run, and ROCm runs natively on Windows, meaning that in terms of productivity, Linux will be better for the AMD cards.
Okay, so when it comes to productivity, chat, there is no question about it. So depending on what you do, if you are running anything related to, even on NVIDIA, chat, everything has to run on Linux. Like Linux run better for that. I'm talking about AI, right? I'm talking about all the stuff. It runs native. It's easier to install. It takes 2 seconds to install Olama on your PC. The ROCm example, like he is using Nobara, which has everything polished. So he comes from a Linux distribution that does everything for him. So it's pretty neat. Sometimes installing ROCm can be a problem. Like let's be honest on certain other distribution, but he chose the right one there and everything works for him, and it's pretty nice to see it.
So there's that. But in terms of gaming, almost every single thing works, and it works pretty well. Honestly, it works pretty well. And I'm really eager to see what SteamOS brings to the table, because it seems that Valve is thinking of releasing SteamOS for computers as well, for mainstream computers, and that would be dope, because we would have a system aimed for gaming, specifically for gaming, made by Valve, and it would just be awesome. Really, it would just be awesome to have it, see it in terms of performance, gaming, compatibility, and so on. But overall, yeah.
So yeah, my review on SteamOS is gonna arrive soon, maybe next week. It requires a lot of work, but I agree with that. I don't think like SteamOS is gonna bring more to what it actually exists in terms of performance and everything, but it's going to bring visibility. When it's me that's saying like Linux is better, not a lot of people watch it or are aware of it. When this gentleman, which I believe has way more subscribers than we do right now, say it, is going to, bring more awareness to the actual situation, right? Which is great. And the more and more it goes into that direction, the more Linux is gonna spread, and this is really nice, chat. This is really nice, but again, like in terms like awareness is not performance. So yeah, SteamOS is gonna bring a lot, but it won't be like plus 50% performance because it's SteamOS. That's the whole point.
Productivity for the AMD cards, it is better on Linux. There are several applications that don't work for Linux, sadly, but in terms of gaming and so on, everything basically works now with a translation layer. It's so easy. It's just so easy to do that. It's really mind-blowing what Linux was 10 years ago and what it is now. It's just much better.
That's cool.
You can definitely use it as a daily driver for 99% of applications that you have. It's just the way it is. Very, very good, I must say.
Do you think he's gonna switch to Linux? That would be the real question. Because making a video like that, it's fun. But like, would he actually switch to Linux?
If you're playing competitively online and so on, you still have to rely on Windows, of course. But besides that, you can just use Linux as a daily driver without any kind of issues. Because again, it just works. And well, that's all for today's video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.
Okay.
Leave your comment in the comment section and let me know what you think about today's video if you really enjoyed it.
So guys, that was a good video, chat. That was a good video. I'm gonna put the link in description below. And yeah, that was pretty neat, chat. That was pretty neat.